We are January 2023. Happy New Year to everybody. And this month's Saturday Math is focused on students with disabilities. I'm going to share my screen and give you an overview of what you're going to see and hear today. Today, our topic is Math Disconnected, DYS-Connected, featuring students with disabilities. Our focus is also serving the needs of students with disabilities. As I've already talked about, there's this disconnect between the education world and the medical world, and I want to bring awareness to that today. But more importantly, I want us as educators. So I'm assuming if you're here, you're an educator, you might be a student, you might be a parent, you might be a person with disabilities yourself, and you're thinking, okay, let me know myself more. So how do we serve the needs with people with disabilities? Even if you own a company or you work at a non-education place, and there are workers that have disabilities, we all need to be aware so that we can better connect and support the people in the workplace with disabilities. So these are not things that can be cured. They are not things that go away, but they are things that can be accommodated over time and managed over time. And we talk a lot now, and I'm very happy about this, about the mental health issues in this country and around the world. And I'm glad that's really coming to light. But some of that stems from, well, all of it stems from disconnections in the brain, but some of that stems from disabilities that maybe some of us have or know somebody that has and has not ever been addressed or diagnosed. And so you can imagine with the mental health and knowing that something isn't quite right with you, but not really being able to put a finger on it, that awareness can actually alleviate a lot of the anxiety and stress for wondering what's happening to me and why am I like this? So there's so many components that are involved, and we are going to talk specifically today in schools. How do we best serve the needs with students with disabilities and specifically with math? So we're really going to niche that down today. And haha, no pun intended, the right way. This is why I say the right way. And that is because we have a very large need to connect those two worlds that I was talking about. So I'm going to unshare my screen for just a moment and introduce you to Sherry. I don't know. I've never said this before. Introduce you to the medical world. Are you the medical world? I mean, I don't know. How do I
guess that's the closest thing that we have in this particular situation, because that's how an occupational therapist is trained. We are trained to understand medical diagnoses.
You know, and I never even thought about this. I mean, I didn't even prepare to say that conflict, and I didn't even connect it to you and I, but I want to introduce all of you to Sherry Dotter. Sherry Dotter, as she just said, is an occupational therapist. So we're going to call her the medical world today, and we're going to call me the education world. And those two worlds with us collided about 4 years ago. And that collision has brought a lot of awareness about the major disconnects between those two worlds and how we're serving students in the education setting and then in the therapy settings. So we are actually kicking off a challenge for you coming up. And this challenge is called Math Disconnected. And it is a more extensive version of today. So I'm going to give you a taste of what that challenge is today. And then we are going to take you on a journey for 5 days, 1 hour a day, to talk about this collision between the medical and education world and how we can better serve our students. Sherry, tell us a little bit about yourself as an occupational therapist, as a brain-based neuroscience expert, and the queen bee of the medical world now. No, now I'm giving people false impressions here. Talk to us a little bit, Sherry.
Okay, I'm even going to go with that queen bee for just a brief moment. When I was a kid, do you remember the days when you had a CB and you had a scanner in the house, and to communicate with people out on the road, you used a CB? Well, we were all bees in my house, and Honeycomb, I think, was the name of our home. And I was busy bee because I was always busy doing something. Of course, my mom had to be the queen bee at the time. But it's just funny that you say that, because bees have been one of those things that have come up in my life all the time. So sorry for that sidebar. But
awesome. Queen bee of the medical world. What can you tell us about the disconnection and our focus on reconnection?
Well, I'm going to say that there's also a disconnect from the medical world, because the medical world sees what doesn't work. It's dis-ease. It's not an ease of life. It's a disconnect with the ease of life. And so we're looking at for what's wrong so we can fix it. For the first 15 years of my career, I worked in stroke rehab. So I was working with, okay, this arm doesn't work. How do we get it to work again? And that was my first connection with dysgraphia, or illegible handwriting. And that was post neurological event, which means that something happened. They knew it before. And I thought, oh, this is going to be easy moving into peds, moving into school-based therapy. I'm not going to have any trouble. I know what the body does. Oh, that's not correct. Because when kids are learning how to read and write and do math, it's a habituation. They need to learn the habit of math, reading, and writing. And so we have this disconnect with what is a normal flow of development with what is an abnormal flow. And I've always been fascinated with the neuroscience. So one of the things I did when I went back to grad school was I wanted to try and find out what were those connections early on that changed. And so one of the things I've been fascinated with is primitive reflexes. I don't know if you've ever heard that or not, but they really do affect what kids do in school. So I know that's probably a little bit deeper than we're even going into with the challenge, but I want to say that there's a lot of complexity neurologically that's happening that, one, as a therapist, it took me until I was in graduate school to learn. So it's not something that's in your realm of education, and I get it.
Absolutely. And I really want to hang on just a couple of the points that you said. You are the dysgraphia expert, and it's not just about writing. So when I showed all of you the screen on the right way, WRITE, this is why I wrote it that way for the challenge, because Sherry and I are going to get into how the lack of math understanding is either affected by dyslexia, dysgraphia, writing, ADHD, or the lack of math understanding affects all of those things. And Sherry, you brought up a great point in stroke victims versus students in school. And I had never thought about it this way, honestly. So stroke victims used to know. Our kids didn't used to know. So that's a very different type of therapy. And I will also say what you said again, but you didn't say this in so many words. I think the medical world has a lot to learn about disability and how we support students that never had the knowledge, and we're trying to help students learn. Now, that was pretty heavy when Sherry and I were kind of doing that introduction there. that's why we're going to have a focused 5-day challenge on that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. Today, I'm just going to give you some grab and go strategies, because even though it's complex, there are a few simple ways that we can work with math in our schools with students with disabilities, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. We make it much more of a big deal than it really is. Now, when I talk about students with
can I interrupt you?
Go ahead.
And from my perspective, I didn't have that connection with what you understand as an educator. It has taken me, what, 5 years now, Jeannalie, to like really grasp what is going on in a teacher's brain. So
and in the education setting. And that's the disconnect. There's these expertise that we have in the education world and the expertise that they have in the medical world. And both expertise are absolutely essential. And without each other knowing the expertise of the other world, we can never make those connections. And that's what Sherry and I have done over the last 4 years, is become aware of each other's worlds and have now made these connections and have solutions for you. That's the exciting part of it. Now, if you're here today and you're thinking, okay, but I teach gifted kids, and maybe this Saturday isn't for me, but I still want, no. So, couple of things. Our gifted students. Now, I dare to say this, but I mean, you know me, I just say anything unfiltered. This is where we are, take it or leave it. It's the Jeannalie opinion. But our gifted students really have that as their own disability. I mean, we think, oh, this kid is gifted and what a blessing and what a, blah, blah, blah. No. That can be just as much of a curse at times as a disability in and of itself. I mean, I would venture to say that we could categorize gifted as its own separate disability. And then if you think about this, if you think about students that are identified gifted, but also have a diagnosed disability, those students are called twice exceptional. Now, you really have to understand the brain to know how to best serve them. So if you teach gifted kids, whether they have another diagnosed disability or not, this is definitely for you today and for your students. This is actually what you're going to see if you are interested in registering for the challenge, which I'll talk to you about how to do that in just a moment. But Sherry and I actually have our book together coming out called Math Disconnected. It will launch in later of 2023. And this is our working, you're like in like an exclusive event today. Like this, I didn't even ask Sherry if I was allowed to share this. So like, don't like take pictures of this and put it on the internet. Like this is like top secret stuff. So this is our working image on our book cover. And what we are hoping to share with you during the challenge is how to connect the puzzle pieces of all of those disconnections. So who are we talking about though with students with disabilities? I want to sort of lay the groundwork between students who don't have number sense and students that don't have math ability. What you're seeing is a coordinate plane, a graph, a two-dimensional situation that creates 4 types of students. Number sense is an innate, inborn understanding of the magnitude of numbers. Magnitude meaning the size of numbers, how large or small, the value of numbers, and the position in space, or the position on a number line. The reason I say position in space is that's the phrasing that Sherry uses as far as visual spatial. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to cross between the language of education language and medical language, and then Sherry is going to add to that also so that we can look at the language of both worlds and use that to help better understand our students. So I'm not going to get into this a lot because it's in the book, Making Math in Ears. But number sense is an inborn innate understanding. Number sense cannot be taught, but it can be learned. Number sense is a conceptual foundation. Math ability is school math. It's the symbols, the numbers, the notations, the math that we learn in school. It's not anything that students would discover. You know, if you teach higher level grades, students aren't going to just discover y equals mx plus b. Like they have to be taught that in school. And then once they're taught that, and then they understand what it means conceptually, then they have an attachment to the symbols and notations in mathematics. Math ability is understanding the procedures and processes, the algorithms, being able to follow step by step. You know, math ability is the knowing, the quick recall of math facts. That's not number sense. Now, as I'm saying all of these things, you might think, oh my gosh, that's everything that my students with disabilities struggle with. Yes. Yes. So if you think, okay, who's got the weak math ability, the school math, the constant struggle with facts, notations, symbols, algorithms, estimation, etc., we're going to go lower on this math ability continuum, and our students that we're talking about today are going to fall in these two quadrants. And that's all you need to know about that today. So that's who we're talking about today. You can get a full-blown learning from the book, Making Math in Years. That is the high-level focus, is what types of students are in all four quadrants, not just the quadrants 3 and 4 at the bottom. This will explain what number sense is and math ability is, what the characteristics are of students in all four quadrants, how to serve students in all four quadrants. The Math Disconnected book that's coming out is only focused on those bottom two quadrants. And that's what we're focused on today. So when we talk about these students with disabilities, and we talk about all students, honestly, there's really only 3 things that we need to teach them. That's it. There are 3 things that we need to teach them. These 3 things are the underlying concepts that connect to almost every single one of our standards. So I'm going to share with you those 3 things today. And then once we're grounded a little bit in what those concepts mean, I'm going to show you examples of strategies that are going to build those concepts and minimize the gaps of lack of learning for those concepts. What I'm also going to do is not only share those strategies, but share how these strategies can be used over and over again, whether you pull students for intervention or whether you're working with whole class, because these strategies have a natural differentiation that I can actually do a whole class tier 1 lesson with my students, and I can naturally differentiate it for all of the ability levels of students in my class. I know it sounds like this magic bullet. It actually kind of is. It kind of is. But the problem is there's going to be a lot of yeah, buts. Well, yeah, but I have this student. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I could get into my background for the last 23 years. However, I don't want to waste our time with that today. I'm just going to ask that you trust this path that I've been on, that Sherry's been on, that some of you have been on for a number of years, that have really unpacked this collision of medical and educational diagnosis. And we are going to jump into what those are. I'm going to go back and forth a lot sharing my screen today, so bear with me. Okay, probably want to know the 3 power concepts. These are the 3 things that all kids need to know. But if we're going to really narrow our focus with students with disabilities, this is it. I'm going to kind of share this story also. We live in subtraction world far too long for our primary students. We live in subtraction world like way far too long. And I'm not saying subtraction isn't important. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do subtraction. I'm not saying, but I have a 2nd grade teacher right now that started subtraction around about October, and really kids have been doing nothing but subtraction since then. It's January, and we still have students that don't understand subtraction. So what do we do instead? We give small doses of every standard and content over time, but we focus more heavily on these 3 power concepts. And I'm going to tell you, subtraction isn't one of them. Subtraction isn't one of them. Now, I could do an entire Saturday morning on what subtraction is and how we can help students better understand subtraction. That's a different set of strategies. And I don't know, maybe we'll do that some Saturday. Because the way that we're intervening with subtraction, I mean, it shouldn't take 4 months for students with disabilities in second grade to get a concept of subtraction. So instructionally, we have some repairs that we need to make. However, my point here is subtraction is not one of those high-level concepts that's going to really launch high levels of achievement and accessibility at the secondary levels of mathematics. It's just not. I'm certified 712 mathematics. However, about, I'm going to say 17, 18 years ago, I immersed myself in early childhood development, began working with students in kindergarten, first grade, because I was curious at the secondary level why there are so many gaps. So in working with these students, I even took many of my 7th and 8th grade students to go do math with the kindergarten, first grade students, because that was part of my research of really understanding child development, what math looks like at that age, what kids can do, what they can't do. And all of that created and filtered out some standards that don't have high leverage, but created this focus on the 3 power concepts. Number 1 is fraction. I mean, that's not a surprise. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But here's what I'm going to tell you that you may not have thought about before. If fraction is so important, and fraction is one of the biggest struggles for students, then why is it, if I'm a first grade teacher right now, my kids haven't seen a fraction all year yet? I mean, I'm just being real. I'm just telling you what I see. You may be like, John Lee, that's not even me. That's not, my kids have seen fractions every month all year, and I'm a first grade teacher. Great. You are not the norm. So what happens is we know where these deficits are. We know what the struggles are. However, we wait until March when the fraction unit comes up to do fraction. Now I pause there because this is the kind of awareness that I'm talking about. Sometimes there's not even a special strategy that we need to use. We just need to expose students more often all year long. Sometimes that's the answer. I call that interactions over time. Now you're going to have to come back for another Saturday, because our tasks that we're going to do today are not the heavy fraction tasks. They're going to focus on the other 2. Okay, but that's what these Saturday sessions are for. Every month we kind of have this new and different focus, and we get the depth of these concepts. Second one, factors. This is what I'm talking about with subtraction is not a high leverage concept. It's important. There are many things that we want kids to know about subtraction. But if that's the one and only thing that we do for 4 months, at the expense of no exposure to fraction and no exposure to factors. Now, you may be thinking, okay, I know what fraction is. I have no idea what factors are. Factors are basically, and I'll tell you what we as teachers want it to be, fact fluency with single digit multiplication. So when I talk to secondary teachers, they're like, if kids just knew fraction and math facts, like we'd be golden. When they say math facts, they mean single digit multiplication. So today we're really going to focus on building that fact fluency, but in a conceptual way. I'm going to give you the strategies that you can use in intervention to build single digit fact fluency. And finally, function. And you might say, oh, well, I teach kindergarten, so maybe that one isn't for me. That one is especially for you, because function and rate are essentially just skip counting. And how do we build single digit fact fluency? It's with a good foundation of skip counting. What is skip counting? Skip counting is rate that leads to function. See, I told you we're making some of these things a bigger deal than what we need to. Now, what we have to do as educators, though, is we have to completely shift our knowledge, our mindset, our own awareness and perspective on what mathematics teaching and learning is. So yes, it's a huge shift and there's a huge learning curve. However, it's very simple strategies. So that's it. Anything we teach K-12, 95% of what we teach K-12 connects back to these three things. Even subtraction. So subtraction would fall into the factors category and remind me to tell you how later if I don't when we get to our task. Here is our signature strategy here at Minds on Math. Quick dots. So if you just use quick dots in your classroom or in your intervention sessions, this will lead to a high level of understanding for factors and function and everything I talked about within that. Skip counting, patterns. I didn't say patterns before, I'm saying it now. Skip counting, patterns, estimation, fact fluency, quick recall of single digit multiplication, quick recall of single digit addition. All of those things that we want kids to master, we're spinning our wheels, we're running the hamster wheel because we're doing what a lot of times is all we know, but we're doing what intervention programs and textbooks tell us to do, and they don't have this awareness. They do not have the knowledge of the collision between the medical and the education worlds. And that is what we're bringing you today. So in a moment, we are going to jump into our task. We're actually going to learn this stuff through doing the mathematics, but I'm going to stop my share for a moment. Any thoughts, questions, concerns, pushback? I mean, look, I didn't give you the disclaimer today. You're allowed to disagree with us and you're allowed to tell us, because that is what is going to make that collision even more powerful. I mean, come on now. So thoughts, comments, questions.
I put a comment in the chat. It says change that to, and it was supposed to be yes and. And so you had talked about yes, but. And I want to say change that thought to yes and. Yes and builds conversation, but breaks it down. So my son studies improv, and that's one of the techniques to continue a conversation and add more depth to the conversation. So as you are having these conversations with the other teachers in your school building or beyond, change the word but to and see how it changes the conversation.
And that's a really great point too, because some of you are teacher leaders or department chairs or instructional coaches, or you're here today not only to learn yourself, but to then spread awareness and coach others on this as well. So that is like pro ninja tip. Thank you, Sherry. Pro ninja tip when you're having conversations and someone says something, maybe you don't completely agree, whatever it is. Yes, I hear you. And how exciting that I have something else to say. It does add a very different flavor. Before I share my screen again, I'm going to introduce to you Krista, if you could just give us a wave. Krista Ewing. Krista is one of our certified coaches. So Sherry and Krista both will monitor the chat for us and answer some of your questions if you put it in the chat. So if you have any questions or you have any thoughts or anything at all, or any specifics that you want to know more about, utilize the chat, put that in the chat. Sherry and Krista will help monitor the chat. I don't see any of our other certified coaches. Am I missing anybody? Perfect. All right, awesome. Okay, we are going to do our quick dot. This is how it works. The facilitation of a quick dot is such that I'm going to show you, and this is exactly how I say it to students. I'm going to show you a set of dots. I'm going to take it away. So you're only going to see it for about 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, or seconds, the importance of units. So you're going to see this for about 3 seconds, 4 seconds. I'm going to take it away. And in the chat, you're going to type how many dots you saw. Now, with students that have done this frequently with me, they know that they're first initially going to make their estimate of how many dots they saw, but they're going to have in their mind how they saw the dots. What was the arrangement and how was the image built? So, oh my gosh. Okay, I could do a 30-minute teaching right now on everything that we could use as an intervention with the instruction that I just said, but let's hold back, okay? There's so much to unpack there, but I just want to jump into the mathematics, okay? So here is the quick dot. Type in the chat, how many dots did you see? How many dots did you see? Type that in the chat. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, quick dots have a lot of variations. Sometimes I will show quick dots with coins because students struggle with the concept of money. So sometimes my quick dots will be created with coins, sometimes with dominoes, sometimes with Legos, sometimes with unit squares on grid paper. So there's lots of variations of quick dots and how the image is constructed, but there's also a lot of variations and levels of quick dots. So there are simpler quick dots. There are much more complex quick dots. Perfect. Sherry, keep adding your instructional touches. Kirk, keep adding your instructional touches. Kathy, hey, good to see you today. Add your instructional touches. So what I love about the chat is as thoughts come to your mind, put them in the chat. Okay. Sherry says coins are a circle. It adds a perceptual shift. Okay. So in the medical world, occupational therapy, Sherry's expertise, we're talking about visual perceptual. As a matter of fact, if you want an in-depth understanding of the neuroscience and what is happening in the brain and some of these things that Sherry is telling us today and putting in the chat, her book, Handwriting, Brain, Body Disconnect. Handwriting, Brain, Body Disconnect. So this is the disconnect between the brain and what we're asking all of the senses to do. The touching, the writing, the speaking. So it's a very sensory-based exploration from the occupational therapy, the medical standpoint, and how we can best serve students in education. Handwriting, Brain, Body Disconnect. Kirk's been using the quick dots online with students using, oh, Kirk, using tens frames and the dots to show another great variation of that. Oh, Kirk, I got to show you guys something. This is going to be super fun. I'm so glad you said that. Carol says this technique allows for putting tape. Yes. Boom. I gotta show you what I did, what quick dot I showed my kinders the other day. Let me find it. Oh my gosh, Kirk, see, I love when you give your perspective because it triggers connections for me. And I have to show you, look, I mean, let me show you some examples of quick dot variations. I mean, let's just do it because yeah, this is a game changer. Like I'm telling you right now, if quick dots is the only thing you do in math intervention, you will completely change the game of outcomes for your students. Like I'm not even messing. All right, friends, this is the quick dot that I gave my kindergarten class last week. And I did this to trick them on purpose. You guys are gonna like this. I like to mess with kids a lot. Okay, here's the quick dot I showed my kinders. So I told my kinders, okay, you're gonna see a quick dot and here it is, da, 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 da. How many did you see? Now I was super excited because a lot of my kinders were like 25, 25, 25, 25. I'm like, how did you see them arranged? And they're like, I saw 2 10s and I saw 5 more, 2 10s and 5 more, 2 10s and 5 more. Okay, I was thrilled. However, see, I like to mess with them. See, they're ready for it. All right. These are egg cartons. So then what I do when I facilitate quick dots, after they make their guesses and they tell me how they're arranged, we have some conversation. I show the quick dot again and I say, my favorite 3 words, tell me about this image. And right away, some of the kids, now students with disabilities are not even going to catch this when they see this, and that's okay. Oh my gosh, like my students that struggle, when they were like 10, 10, and 5, and that's 25, I about dropped to the floor. So like, leave it at that. Like, don't even worry about doing anything else with those kids. But with the rest of the class, actually, I mean, with the whole class, knowing that not every kid is going to, you know, make the connection to this, the kids were like, oh, there's more than 10. So I had physical egg cartons that the kids could feel and touch and use on that day. And I said, what do you know about buying eggs in a carton like this? And the kids were like, it's a dozen. So see what the quick dots does. And these are some of these ninja tips that I'm not even going to be able to express all of them today. But what a quick dot does is, and the variations of quick dots is, it allows us to make all of these connections to other math concepts that we may not even get to at our grade level, or we may get to too late in the year that kids don't have enough exposures. So I like 12s frames as well as 10s frames, and I like to use egg cartons and talk about the idea of a dozen. That changes how this idea of a 10s frame works. Well, actually, it works the same way. This works the same way as an idea of a 10s frame. Now, what I also do with students with disabilities that, you know, maybe they don't know like pairs to 8, like numbers that make 8. Our egg cartons here, I'm in Ohio in the States, they are either made out of styrofoam like this or out of, I wanted to say wood because it looks like wood, cardboard. Wood. Cardboard. So what you can do with these egg cartons is just take your scissors and cut off how many of the spaces that you don't want. And you can make a 2s frame, 4s frame, 6 frames. You can make all the different frames. We also have egg cartons that have 18. And so, you know, you can look at various, especially by like grade 1, grade 2, and we're looking at fact fluency with single digit addition. I'll get those 18, those cartons with 18. And then we're looking at numbers like up to 20. You know, they don't have egg cartons with 20, but until somebody makes one, I just improvise, you know. But Kirk, anyway.
They do have 2.5 dozen egg cartons though.
I mean, boom, look at that. See?
You just gotta go to Sam's.
Yeah.
Go to Sam's.
Go to Sam's Club. All right. All right. There's a lot going on in the chat here. Yeah, I'm pretty sneaky, Kirk. You know me. And I'm pretty snarky too. I try to hold back. I try to hold back and be professional in front of this group, but I can't promise anything on a Saturday. Yeah. So Sherry in the medical world and with her sensory-based therapies, Like she's going crazy over there with egg cartons. Okay. What I want to say is during the 5-day challenge, I keep teasing you with this. Let's unpack this for a minute. During the 5-day challenge, which starts on January 23rd, you can actually register at johnily.com. Oh, I'm Johnily, by the way. I don't think I introduced myself today. Hey, I'm your fearless leader. Okay, I'm Johnily. If you go to johnily.com, you can register. You'll see that profile with the puzzle pieces. You'll see that image. And if you click on that, you can register for the 5-day challenge. It's free. It's free. But the reason I say that is this is exactly what Sherry and I are going to be doing is we're going to tag team much more than just like this math focus today. We are going to take you on a 5-day journey of the equal sharing of educational learning and the medical learning piece. So for 1 hour a day, if you go to johnly.com, you can see that. It is a free challenge, but there are some upgrades. So if you come every day and you want the contact hours, there's a charge for that. And then if you want to stay an extra hour with us so that we can customize to your specific needs and students, there's a VIP level. So anyway, I kept teasing you with the challenge, but that is how you register. I'll talk more about it before we're finished today too, and I'll let Sherry talk a little bit about it. But when I looked at Sherry's comments, egg cartons can be used for so many interventions. During the 5-day challenge, we're going to take each of the interventions that we share with you, and we're going to give the education and the medical perspective. I'm doing real heavy math today, but you're going to get a more balance of that. Yeah. I can make you a 12s frame on paper, Kirk. What I do with 12 frames at this point is I take my 10s frames. I have big 10s frames. Oh, please, John Lee, have it right here. Give me 30 seconds.
While she's taking that 30 seconds to find that, one of the things that I'm thinking about from the sensory standpoint on the egg cartons is some kids have a tactile aversion to different textures. And if you have the different types of egg cartons in your classroom, kids can make a swap if one of those textures is aversion inducing. So keep that in mind to have both on available so that if you have a kid who's having issues that you can just swap out.
So these are my like 10s frames. Actually, when I follow up with you guys, I will send you a couple PDFs of my templates. But what I like to do is my kids are used to working with these 10s frames. And the reason I make them this size is they can put blocks, they can put coins. We use a lot of different manipulatives to fill 10s frames. I don't like teddy bear manipulatives. That does nothing for me mathematically. Okay. It's cute. I'm not about cute. Okay. Pretty doesn't create progress. It's, you know, I'm going to probably offend some elementary teachers right now. And that's okay. But the prettier our stuff is, the less substance it sometimes tends to have. I mean, look, I'm a truth teller. Anyway, so here's these 10s frames. What I have my kids do is I have them actually draw 2 more boxes so that they can get that 10 plus 2, 10 plus 2 when I make the 12, or they just pretend those 2 boxes are there. And that's how they start to like symbolize and represent and da, 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 da. Now, students with disabilities, you're going to want, and I can make one. I actually don't have a template for a 12s frame, but I'll make one, bang, boom, bam. I'll send it to you guys. Someone just needs to remind me. So if you don't get it, send me an email because, you know, this little brain. So anyway, yeah, good question there. Illustrates. Oh, yes, Carol. So imperial and metric. Sometimes if we're speaking the same language, Carol, we talk standard and metric units of measures. Bang, boom, bam. Okay. Yes, Kirk, I know you love the teddy bears for pre-K, but the shape of it is a very complex shape. I like my blocks. You use the teddy bears. You know what? I love I love that pre-K and K are so cute. I love it. So use your teddy bears and embrace it and love it. Kiss them. It is all good. Okay. The 5-day challenge. Yes, the days will be recorded. And there's a lot of other, like, not only will that be recorded, but the VIP will be recorded for another piece and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, we've got you covered. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? These are really great. Any other thoughts or comments? All right, keep them coming. Now you might be wondering, oh, geez, gosh, I came today and I teach algebra. Is she ever going to get to something that applies to me? First of all, by doing quick dots, what I can do with older students is I can actually remediate on some of these below grade level concepts very quickly and in a very engaging way. So a lot of times my high school teachers are like, I can't go back and remediate. Like I have so much content to cover. Well, it's not an either or. I say this all the time. Intervention is regular instruction. Intervention is regular instruction. So at the high school level, if we want to improve number sense and conceptual understanding for our students, especially our students with disability, improving number sense at the high school level is not intervention. Improving number sense at the high school level is not intervention. It's regular instruction. Johns Hopkins University put out a study in 2011 that says our number sense doesn't peak until we're 30 years old. So if kids don't have number sense at 16 years old, that's normal and typical. So we have these false expectations. And then some of my high school teachers are like, yeah, but John Lee, how do I have time to go back? You have to change the task and strategy that you use. You can actually remediate and teach your grade level content with quick dots. Like you have to find the tasks that do both. So you can do both. It's not an either or. We can have our cake and we can eat it too. Okay. Let me show you what I mean by this. Okay. So let's keep going on the facilitation of the original quick dot here, which I've lost it and my bar is in the way up there. And here we go. Nope, that's not it. Yes, it is. Okay. Oh my gosh, John Lee. So here's the quick dot. This one was fairly simple to see. So this is kind of an intermediate quick dot, you know, not as simple as some, but not complex. And some of you are probably looking at the rectangle and the chunking. Our students with disabilities don't see numbers as shapes. That's one of their struggles. So the biggest intervention for our students with disabilities is to see numbers as shapes and chunks. See numbers as shapes and chunks. Specifically as rectangles. Last month, in last month's Saturday math, yes, Carol, I will do that. I'll go through this chat and I will put the Johns Hopkins research link. It's fascinating. Actually, in the Making Math in Years book, we actually quote it in the Making Math in Years book and we have the reference for it and all that, but I'll send you the email because we talk about the study and what it means and what they did and how they followed kids throughout. So yes, I'll make sure you get that information in my follow-up email to all of you. And okay, so last month in December, we focused on one strategy and how it was the game changer for pre-K through 12. And the strategy last month was making rectangles. So we took an in-depth look at making rectangles. Now, the reason I tell you this is you can still access it. If you go to mindsonmath.com, I'll put this in the chat. Go to mindsonmath.com, M-I-N-D-S, mindsonmath.com. Actually, you can register for the challenge there also. I think the image is there. It's probably more at the bottom of the site. But if you go to mindsonmath.com, you will see a mini course that we just taught a couple of weeks ago called Math in a Month. And in that mini course, it was like the second phase of last month's Saturday session. Last month's Saturday session, the video of that is on the Minds on Math website. So you can just go there and click play. Like you don't have to give your email or anything like that. You just go there, you click play, and you can watch this session from last month. So thank you to all of you that actually took our mini course on Math in a Month. We're implementing Math in a Month right now. If you got into the mini course, you got in at $47. That has gone away. So, you know, people get rewarded for quick action, but you still can purchase the mini course. However, it is $97 and it's only going to be $97 until January 31st. So just for a few more weeks, it's going to be $97, and then it'll go up to its regular price of $297. So those of you that got in for $90 or for $47 and actually came live to the class, and we are now implementing together. Quick action, you're rewarded for it. So good work on that. If you didn't get in on that and you want in, if you get in before January 31st, you can get in for $97. Like I said, after that, it's going to go up to, the course is going to go up to $297. So jump on that if you would like to do that. But the Making Rectangles video of last month's session is on mindsonmath.com. It will be there for a limited time. So if you get a chance to watch that video, you'll get that one strategy all the way through all grade levels. So if we go back to our quick dot here, now let's escalate this very, very quickly. Okay. If I'm doing this with, let's say, my algebra class, okay, it's not going to take very long to escalate this. So let me kind of like regroup here. So with my algebra class, I'm going to be like, okay, guys, we're going to do a quick dot today. I'm going to show you the dots, take them away. How many did you see? Boom, it's gone. How many did you see? Tell me, how were they arranged? Da, 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 da. Okay. So here's what I'm doing now to accelerate this very quickly. Okay. I'm going to now tell you that this is stage 3 of a growing pattern. This is stage 2 of that growing pattern. This is stage 1 of that growing pattern. And here are all 3 stages together. Now, what would I ask students to do next with this pattern? What would I say next? Now, those of you that have been around me, you better not disappoint me right now, okay? Those of you that have not had interaction, you're going to get this answer wrong, and that's okay. You're here to learn today, okay? But if I show stage 1, 2, and 3, let me stop the share because this is getting real. What would I say and do next as a teacher, as an instructor, as a facilitator to lead into the next phase of Quick Dots? What would I say and do next? Unmute and tell me, or type it in the chat. Christy, there's my old friend. She's not old, but we're old friends. Oh, Julie. Yeah. Okay. Here are the next things that I would do to facilitate this. Because my magic in facilitation, this is what fills gaps. This is what students with disabilities absolutely need, is to extract their perspective. We need to become aware of those students' perspective. They need to become aware of their own perspective. That's called metacognition. That's SMART. We teach on SMART math. The M in SMART is called metacognition. Metacognition is becoming aware of your own thinking and your own perspective. So the one thing that we don't have time for in education is to gain the student perspective and dig deep into metacognitive feedback. What I mean by this is, how do I facilitate to create thinking, reasoning, and sense making for our students rather than solving and answering? I'm not saying that solving and answering is not important, but what our students with disabilities need, they need a strong foundation in number sense, which they don't have, which is a conceptual foundation. And what they need is to improve their ability to think, reason, and sense make. Not until they have those awarenesses can they connect to math ability or school math. Now, the big question, now, you're probably not going to disagree with that. Yeah, we agree. Kids need number sense. They need to improve their estimation. They need. You're not going to disagree with that. You know what these kids need. But we're not giving them what they need, either because we don't know or we're getting too much pushback and we're denying it too much. What they need is good instruction. They don't need the program that costs, $8 a kid every year. They don't need the program that, you purchase all these books in a box. They don't need the program, blah, 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 blah. Okay, those are bonuses. If you have that, great. Use it better. What they need is good instruction. So, Quick Dots is good instruction, but the way it's facilitated is better instruction. So when I get to this part of the Quick Dot, the next thing I facilitate is my favorite questions. What do you see? What do you notice? See, our instinct, because it's just habitual, this is all we've experienced as teachers, this is all we know. Our instinct is to actually ask a question that's going to move very quickly to answer, getting, and solving. We'll get there. But slow your horses, okay? We want kids to swim more often in thinking, reasoning, and sense making. We want them to swim in creativity. We want them to be curious. That's how we produce engagement, motivation, confidence, decrease anxiety, and decrease the stress for these students. Students with disabilities, what holds them back even more than the content and the learning is their emotions. They are constantly in fight or flight. They're in fight or flight because we are forcing them into answer, getting, and solving more often than thinking, reasoning, and sense making. Again, please don't mistake me. Answer, getting, and solving is essential. I'm a secondary math teacher. It's important for kids to know how to do things and do it accurately. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is the game-changing instructional facilitation for students with disabilities is to engage them more in experiences that focus on thinking, reasoning, and sense making than answer, getting, and solving. And Quick Dots is one way to do that. And the language that I use to facilitate Quick Dots is even more important than the Quick Dot itself. So the next thing we want to ask here is, what do you see? What do you notice? Or you could use my favorite 3 words, tell me about this pattern. That is the very next step in facilitation. We say all the time, oh, my kids, they don't persevere. They don't stick with it. They have no stamina. They don't care. We're doing that to them. Because I guarantee if you give them something they're interested in, they have an immense amount of perseverance. They have it. We're just disintegrating it with our lack of excellent facilitation. I don't want you to miss this today. I can give you 20 variations of Quick Dots. I can give you all of the Making Rectangles lesson plans. I can give you all of the slide deck for the math in a month. I can give you a whole box of intervention books. But without the correct facilitation strategies, And this is the art and savviness of a teacher. Without the correct way that we facilitate and deliver these things, we're missing the boat. We're missing the boat. I was going to say point and boat. Boat. We're missing the boat. We're missing the boat. We're missing the point. We're missing the boat. I'm getting crazy. I'm getting excited, you guys. I get amped up because it's so simple what we can do. Just do quick dots and facilitate it like this. That's it. Come on, friends. I'm telling you. Okay. So now we say, what do you see? What do you notice? Tell me about. Then we get kids' perspective. Now, you can logistically do a lot of things. You can have whiteboards in your classroom. You can do a pear deck. You can have kids, put their response digitally and gather all the responses. You can do a think, pair, share. You can do a turn and talk. You can have them work in groups. Like, I'm not teaching on those logistical things today. So you can use all of your protocols that you use, all of your logistics, all of your like participation strategies. You can do all that here. And I recommend doing all of that. Okay. But the point is, we want kids to swim in the thinking, reasoning, and sense making more often because we want to extract their perspective. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to extract a lot of what they don't know. You're going to extract a lot of their misconceptions, and it's going to make us anxious and frustrated. But I want to make this point. Just because we've extracted it doesn't mean it wasn't there to begin with. It's there anyway. We just know about it now. Do you see what I mean? Like, if we wouldn't have done this facilitation and wouldn't have found out about it, that doesn't mean that it wasn't there to begin with. So you're going to find out so much more about what students don't know than you ever knew before. And it's going to be like, oh my gosh, these kids don't know anything. No, we just know a lot more of what they don't know. That's the point of extracting their perspective. And what's exciting is when I know exactly what they don't know, I can better serve them. I can better serve them. Let me stop sharing for a moment. Let's check in the chat here.
No, just
Sherry.
Uh-oh.
Well, let's mute that. Okay. So Sherry, great point here. This is also how adults learn. Yeah, when I coach I'm an instructional coach. I coach adults. I coach teachers to do this. So yeah, this is how humans learn. This is how the brain learns. Like, we do so many things in our classrooms that are completely opposite of how the brain learns. Don't get me worked up. Don't get me worked up. All right. Anyway. Sherry, you're one step ahead of me. You gave away the answer. That's okay. See, this is how good you are, Sherry. This is how connected we are, my friend. We are like the long lost sisters that didn't know each other until about 5 years ago. So the next thing I was going to ask after, what do you see? What do you notice? You go through all that. What is the next thing that we are going to ask our students to do? Sherry, you are spot on. The next thing I'm going to ask is, what math questions can you create? I'm asking this to my kids. Okay. Now, my friends, you are going to type in the chat. You're going to do this. Creating the math questions for our students is, we're going to get awful outcomes. They're not going to know how to do this. It's going to be dreadful. You've got to do it like 4 or 5 times before they start getting into it. It's going to be awful. It's going to be a terrible experience. You're going to be like, Donnelly, it doesn't work. I'm never doing that again. But you've got to stick with it. You guys have to persevere. Okay. So what I want you to do right now in the chat is, I want you to write down any questions or prompts targeted to your standards. I mean, think about the standards you teach. Think about, the goals on the IEP that you teach. Think about, what you actually have to teach to your kids. And I want you to create a question or a prompt that is going to trigger that teaching. So now you're going to ask those questions that you would have asked before the, what do you see? What do you notice? Okay. So do it. Put it in the chat. Come on now. Come on now. Come on. I gotta take my glasses off. Take my last drink of my vitamins. Yeah, Sherry, great point. I mean, this instruction, this process that I'm teaching you is actually called the achievement formula. It's called the achievement formula. We actually have an extensive course. It's called the Achievement Formula course. It's an online digital course. It's a self-study. And the Achievement Formula framework, the course that we've developed is specific for math, but the Achievement Formula framework itself is targeted to all content. I mean, this works in social studies, phys ed. I mean, this is everywhere. This isn't just a math special. All right. Oh, this is super cool. Okay. What is the next stage? How many dots in the next stage? How do you see that? See, Krista, Krista, one of our certified coaches that have been implementing this for a long time. She's got the best, beautiful question. I'm going to unpack her question. Krista E to everyone at 10:39. Well, these are all 10:39, but anyway, after Sherry says, what questions can you create? These questions all relate. If you go to the chat, Krista says, now Krista has like so many ninja moves here. Okay. If you want to create thinking, reason, and sense, if you want to create thinking, reasoning, and sense making in your classroom, you begin some of your questions with how does, how do. Okay, that's another teaching we do. So Krista did that. So I want to point out that subtlety there. How do you see the stage number in the images? This is the game changer for how we get more kids successful at the advanced math level, is to be able to think explicitly like this. Now, those of you that maybe don't teach secondary, you probably are missing the point that I'm making. But if you do, this is a game-changing question here. What is the next stage? What would be the 5th? What would be the 10th? Which stages have even and odd dots? Love it. How can I write these dots? Oh, Janet, what is the ratio of the dots in stage 1 to stage 3? Boom, there's your fraction ratio exploration. This can trigger right into fraction ratio. Of course, Krista, I mean, you're the expert here. Will stage 10 have double the number of dots in stage 5? Stella, describe the shape. So this, oh, Stella. Oh, look, Kirk already said, oh, Stella, look at this. I'm a little far. I'm a day late and $1 short on your comments here, people. Stella, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And not only when I'm doing this with students, if I have students, which I will do, I will give students grid paper. Oftentimes I will give kids centimeter grid paper and bingo daubers. Okay. I get these at my local Dollar Tree. Okay. Bingo daubers and centimeter grid paper, and kids can create on grid paper. And then I give them smaller grid paper, like 1/4-inch grid paper, and they don't use bingo daubers anymore. They have to use a different symbol. So they can either use a circle or an X. Recreating the quick dot is a prompt that I will have them do here. Okay. What we will also do when Sherry and I collaborate to teach lessons to kids, she will actually do her therapy in the regular classroom. So these kids can get their occupational therapy through this quick dot exercise in the regular classroom. I'm not saying like for therapies, you don't pull kids and do their individual therapies, but this is how this can be embedded in the classroom. Or if students have dysgraphia, dyslexia, sensory motor issues, ADHD, if kids have some of these processing issues, some of these brain-based issues, and as a classroom teacher, if you don't have the support or your kids haven't really been diagnosed, but you see some of these deficiencies, this is what you can do as the regular classroom teacher to provide some of these therapies. Like, you will be golden to your school if you learn about these things, embed them in your instruction, and then start teaching others about it. That's what we want to empower you to do. Okay. So here's some of the other questions. Now, for algebra, what I will do with this pattern is I will ask, now this is game changing. How does, and this is why if you go back and watch the Making Rectangles video from last month's session, you'll see how important making rectangles is and how we develop that over time. If you instruct the making rectangles strategy and then you do this quick dot, this question will make more sense. Okay. How do the dimensions, I'm typing this in the chat as I'm talking, how do the dimensions of the center rectangle in each stage relate to the stage number? How do the dimensions of the center rectangle, so not the center of the rectangle, but like there's those 4 little pieces on the end, forget about those 4 pieces. How do the dimensions of the rectangle in each stage relate to the actual stage number? Now, I'm going to go back to our gifted kids for a moment. If you have a child that is truly gifted, they can tell you what the rule is for the function. They can tell you the 5x minus 4. They can tell you these things. Gifted students just know this. I'm promising you. Now, high achieving kids that are not gifted struggle with this, but they can get it when we teach them procedures on how to get. There are procedures on how to get the rule for the function, the algebraic statement for the function, the algebraic expression for the function, like the 3x squared plus 7, those things that you have to find out. My 3rd graders are doing that right now. My 3rd graders, my 9, 10-year-olds are doing that right now based on the image, not based on procedural and algorithmic teaching that we do in high school to help kids know how to do this. They're doing it based on the image. So my point is, what separates kids into advanced classes and then typical regular classes, what separates those kids out, this is one of the skills that they're able to do, is be able to see function, be able to see the rule for the function. So if I said to you, how many dots are in the 100th stage, they wouldn't have to draw all 100, and they wouldn't have to write how many are in the previous stages. They wouldn't even have to know how many were in stage 99. They would have like a formula, and they'd be able to plug in the number 100, which is the stage number, compute it in their formula, and get the number of dots. That is one of the abilities that our gifted math kids can do innately. Now, most teachers don't have the ability to do that innately. Quick Dots helps instill an innate ability to do that based on the picture. Then we can extend it and teach the procedural ways to do that. So if you teach secondary math, the procedural ways is you write a table and you find the change in Y per change in X. And then, you've got linear and quadratic types of formulas, and there's structures to those formulas. And we hold off and don't teach kids this until high school because we're like, oh, they're not developmentally ready. No, we're just teaching it wrong. Like, we're using the wrong facilitation strategies. We're not teaching it wrong. We're using the wrong facilitation strategies. If we use quick dots and images and visual stimulation to actually teach the mathematics, we can teach these algebra notations with our 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. Yeah. I know that's a lot for us today, but let me share my screen again. Okay. So this is stage 1. Dimensions, and I use the word dimensions with my kinders, and I'll be like, oh, remember what dimensions means? What's it mean? It means how long and how tall. Okay, so think about this, okay? This is rhetorical questions, but I want you to answer where you are. So answer to yourself, okay? So this is stage 1. Forget about these 4 outside dots, okay? There's always 4, always 4, always 4. That's a +4, okay? It's not rocket science, okay? But let's look at stage 1, and there's this rectangle here. What are the dimensions of the rectangle? In other words, and I say this to my kids, what are the dimensions of the rectangle? And I also say to my kids, in other words, how long is your rectangle? How tall is it? Oh, it's 2 long and 3 tall. My 5-year-olds can do this. Okay. So, you can do this. Okay. So this is stage 1, and it's a 2 by 3. This is stage 2, and it's a 3 by 4. This is stage 3, and it's a 4 by 5. So what would the dimensions of the rectangle be in a stage 4? It's going to be a 5 by 6. Now, what some of you are thinking right now is, okay, how is this now intervention? Because you've just gone into like really high level complex mathematics. This is still intervention because if I pull kids into a small group with just my students with disabilities, I can ask all these same questions and they have access to it. For them to figure out, they have to do repetitive counting. And one of the interventions that our kids need with disabilities, they need constant counting. And we need to move them from counting 1, 2, 3, 4 to seeing, oh, 4. That's called subitizing or subitizing. So there are so many other exercises that I can do here, just like Sherry. I know Sherry's probably chomping at the bit. This is what we're going to do in our 5-day challenge. There's so much Sherry wants to say right now that is therapy based, but there are so many other things and prompts that we can do with these questions with our kids with disabilities. Here's the other thing. Let's suppose you've got a full classroom. You're the regular ed teacher. You don't have any support teachers, and you're trying to serve kids with all abilities. You know, maybe you don't have anybody with diagnosed disabilities, but you've got at-risk kids that have these math learning difficulties, but they don't have a disability. So you don't have any kind of intervention support. This is what I can be doing with the whole class. And this is what I mean by these types of things naturally differentiate. So I could say to kids, okay, I want you to draw stage 4, draw stage 5, draw stage 6. That's busy work. That's not like bad busy work. Like I want kids to replicate and draw the future stages, but I can ask kids as they're doing this, as they're busy doing this and engaged in trying to draw, whether it's with bingo daubers, or I use magnetic cookie sheets with magnetic dots, they can create it there, or I use paper plates with those little circle sticky dots that you use at yard sales to put the price on items. Like there's lots of different sensory tactile ways that Sherry has taught me to use to do these therapies in the classroom to give kids better access to the content. All of the kids can be doing all of this creation while I'm walking around the room and customizing the question that each student is going to answer. It's the same lesson, naturally differentiated. Friends, this is a game changer. Quick dots is one of our strategies. We've got about a dozen strategies, maybe 8 in our whole program. Quick dots is one of them, and we have lots of variations of quick dots. This was kind of an in-depth look at one of the strategies and one of the specific variations. So what's our point today? What's our point today? Our point today is math disconnected. There is a disconnect between the brain and the body, basically, that causes a wall or a barrier to learning. How do we better connect so that we can serve our kids with disabilities and meet their needs? Remember the pun, the right way? Because writing, Sherry as our dysgraphia expert, I as your dyscalculia expert, are bringing that together for you. You've seen a glimpse of it today. You've got to grab and go today. So I'm going to follow up with you with this slide deck, with the Johns Hopkins research information, with some TENS frame templates, with some PDFs. So give me until like Tuesday, Wednesday this week. It usually takes me a few days to like check off the to-do list and follow up because I'm headed to a bowling tournament after this. I got to rush right out and won't be home till late. And I mean, it is Saturday. But anyway, I will follow up with you by Tuesday or Wednesday with the email that you used to register for this. Check your spam the next few days because sometimes my emails go into the spam folder. The emails that you got from Eventbrite, those tend to not go in the spam folder, but I'm going to send from my personal email now. And so check your spam folder the next few days. I will send you a lot of follow-up resources that you can grab and go. I'll send you a few extra quick dots too that we didn't do today, but these are going to be some grab and go things that you can use next week in your classroom. All right. So you'll get that. But if you want the next level learning, Math Disconnected 5-day challenge starts Monday, January 23rd. Monday, January 23rd. And you can register at johnley.com. Sherry, talk to us a little bit about what they can expect at the 5-day challenge as well.
Well, where my expertise comes in is how do you apply that to writing? And one of the things that I notice about kids with disabilities compared to some of the other kids in the classroom, when we go to write it, and I use the write with the quotes or using it like literally, they can't transcribe what they see in the image onto paper, even on grid paper, even after you explicitly, systematically, cumulatively, and multisensory wise tell them how to get it there. It takes practice, it takes reinforcement, it takes time. One of the quick dots that John Lee shared today, I would bet that you're going to have kids create a square and then put 4 dots on the corners rather than the rectangle, because they can't perceptually see that. The other thing is that when you write, John Lee uses the bingo dabbers. I want kids to actually write. Writing in small spaces for many kids is difficult. So sometimes I will have the image there, and I will have a smaller grid paper to encourage them to write smaller, because smaller is more difficult.
And so what Sherry is going to do during that 5-day challenge is give you the non-mathematics interventions that are going to improve the writing and the, help me, Sherry. I just lost the word. To improve the functional aspects of these students so that they can better thrive in the typical setting. So not only are there facilitation interventions, but there are specific math strategy interventions. And what Sherry is going to bring, which we didn't see a lot of today, I know Sherry was probably like, I have so much I could say there. But what Sherry is going to bring on that 5-day challenge is the specific non-academic therapies, just like she just shared. Okay, now we're going to use this grid paper. We're going to go to a smaller grid paper because we're working your fine motor. We're helping you better function in the typical environment. And there are specific strategies to be able to do that. That, my friends, is the collision, the good collision, which we call connection between the education and the medical.
There's a fine line as to when the functional intervention and the academic intervention is the priority. So we need to understand what is the priority at that moment, which one are we trying to achieve? Sometimes, although you math teachers are going to say it's always mine, sometimes that functional intervention is much more what the child needs at that moment than the actual academics. So just keep that in mind and be sensitive to that.
Okay, no, I don't want to just like run by that like that didn't just happen, okay? Back up a minute, okay? Sherry, I didn't capture exactly what you said. You said that there are functional interventions and academic interventions. Did I get those phrases right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea of the graph paper, me using smaller paper to copy. For some kids at that very moment, the functional intervention, using the smaller grid paper and getting the writing piece down on paper for that kid might be much more of a priority than the academic skill.
Agreed.
And at other moments, the academic skill is more important than the functional intervention. And it's a fine line, and it's really individualized when the priority needs to happen.
This is exactly what Sherry and I do together, is to talk about these things. And when we're talking about writing, so one of the things that this affects, especially for older students, if we do not give priority to some of these functional interventions, and if we don't intervene with some of these disabilities and this brain-body disconnect, is note-taking. I mean, that's just one example of the lack of ability that some of our older students have. And I'm not saying note-taking like they need to practice note-taking because they're not good note-takers. It's a functional disability that they physically, this has nothing to do, well, I don't want to say nothing, it has everything to do with the brain, but what I'm saying is it's not that we have to teach them academically how to write good note or how to take good notes. It's a functional intervention. We have to teach them how to physically copy by looking up and looking down and looking. And if students have a disconnection in the brain that doesn't allow them to look at the board, see it, come back. And I learned this from Sherry. Sherry, I'm butchering your teaching here, but to look at the board and then be able to write it and just copy it verbatim, there is an intervention for that. And students that have that disability are not going to be able to do, they can't do it. So Sherry, follow up on that and then we'll wrap up here.
Follow up on that. Oh, that's exactly true. They have a system in there that is it's a sensory motor system that is not effectively working. So when they move their head, they lose their visual field for a moment, and it takes them a while to find it again. So when they go look up at the board, it's a big mesh of blur. They find their place after, I would say, an extended time of like 10 or 15 seconds. Think about how long does it take to say a sentence? If they've lost their place physically on looking at the board and you keep speaking, they're 5 sentences behind you. So they've totally, because what their brain is doing is concentrating on the vision. They shut off the auditory. Or they could be listening to the auditory and totally ignoring the visual. So these kids that you've got sitting in class that aren't taking notes are learning with the auditory. They can't connect. That's why when you have an IEP that says the teachers need to give their notes ahead of time, that's why it's so important, because you have one kid who cannot do both at the same time.
They physically cannot do both. And sometimes, I don't like giving the notes ahead of time, because if I'm engaged in thinking, reasoning, and sense making, so what I'll do is I'll tell the kids, you don't need to write this down. Now, some of my some of your play the school game kids, they're like, I'm writing this down. Fine. See, there's my snarkiness. But anyway, I'll tell the kids, you don't need to write this down. I just want you to listen right now and engage in it. And then we'll worry about writing it down later. And I'll give you the sort of the written version of it later. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do as teachers in this 5-day challenge. What we are going to help you with, number one, is the awareness. What we're teaching right now here at the end, which we need to wrap up, is basically making you aware of things that kids can and can't do and should and shouldn't be able to do, and then what we do about it. We've got to really designate that awareness, and then we can help you with the strategies. So friends, we have to jump. Go ahead and register for the 5-day challenge at johnley.com. I have put it in the chat a couple of times. I'll follow up with an email with some resources and the registration as well. The 5-day challenge is free, but there are some upgrades. If you know a curriculum director, a curriculum leader, a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, a special ed curriculum director, if you know a principal, someone who needs to hear this because your school needs to be served, have them sign up for the 5-day challenge. Share the link, share the registration, and hey, you're welcome, Janet. Share the link, share the registration. You're welcome. Mallory. Hey, Mallory. Oh, I didn't see you. Oh gosh, you guys are great.
I think I'm live. I want to just say kudos, Stella. Stella's joined up.
Oh, that's your Stella. Whoop, whoop. Cool. Hey, you guys are welcome. Beverly.
And I know Kirk said he was going to join up too. So thank you guys. I'm going to see you later. I have to run today.
Yep, we're running. Thanks. Kathy, good to see you. Stephanie, hey, thank you. Awesome. You guys are amazing. I love this stuff too. You know I do. That's fantastic. Awesome. Carol, stick with us. We meet every month, but join the 5-day challenge. Y'all have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us today. It has been awesome. Thanks so much.